Talk about what to expect from today's event and also what we did see. Joining me now, NBC News medical correspondent Dr. Natalie Azar, MSNBC political correspondent Jason Johnson, MSNBC contributor Shauna Thomas, MSNBC political contributor Ann Guerin, and Abby Livingston, Washington bureau chief for the Texas Tribune. It's a great panel. We're going to get right into it right now. Doctor, I have to go to you first, Natalie Azar, with regard to what we did see there, the social distancing or really lack thereof. Did you see how tightly packed everybody was in there?
Yeah, that's definitely what stood out to me. I have to say, from our camera angle, we really only saw the backs of people, but it appeared that many, if not most of the people were wearing masks, which I was certainly happy to see. No social distancing whatsoever, lots of cheering. And we know that that's, that can certainly enhance the risk of transmission. I do think it's important to point out that we don't want to apply a double standard here. We do think it's okay to peacefully protest as long as you're doing your best to try to enforce those mitigation measures that we know about.
Yeah, of course. But the fact that we see folks there, I know that the Trump campaign said that they would be handing out masks but not requiring people to wear them.
Right.
Would it be better overall if the Trump campaign were to say, hey, guess what? We learned a lot the last couple of weeks about COVID-19 as it affected this president. We know what we've said before now, but now we have been somewhat humbled by all of this. Not that we would ever expect him to say that, but wear your masks. We're going to give them to you. We ask you to wear them. You must wear them.
Absolutely, Alex. I have characterized this as a real missed opportunity. The White House basically flouted the most basic precautions from public health experts. It triggered a super spreading event. If anything, this would be the moment in time to say, you know what, everybody, look what happened here. It can happen to you. Wear your masks, socially keep yourself distant, wash your hands, and we'll get through this together. It truly is ironic that exactly 2 weeks to the day that we think the super spreading event happened, another event is happening on the White House lawn.
Yeah. Hey, I'm also joined by NBC News medical correspondent Dr. John Torres. He's popped up as well. Dr. John, what concerns you when you look at this group? You've got the cheers. You've got people really expressing themselves, lots of loud cheers and clapping and yelling, but they're pretty tightly packed in.
And if you look at it, Alex, what you're seeing is towards the back, there's some social distancing going on. Towards the front, not as much. And we do know, when they had the protest earlier on a few months ago, that it wasn't the super spreader event we thought it was. But we also know that, about a month and a half ago, or September 26th, when they had that event at the White House, that turned into a super spreader event. Big difference there. They were inside. Sometimes they were outside. They weren't wearing masks, and they were hugging each other. And so you can see some differences here. But the big concern is, again, that these people are close together. They're screaming, they're shouting, and we know things can spread this way. If you look at it, it's what we call the W's. Wear a mask, watch your distance. They're doing one of those. They're wearing masks for the most part. Watching distance is another thing. But I agree with what Dr. Azar said. Getting that message across there is important. And if you saw what President Trump talked about, he mentioned a couple things. He said science and medicine will eradicate the virus. But he didn't mention the fact that it's not just science and medicine, it's human behavior as well. Right. And that is doing those social distancing, wearing masks, those types of things. Science and medicine are not going to do it by themselves. And it would be nice to hear that message as well, Alex.
Speaking of human behavior, Shauna Thomas, I want to ask you this. Why does the president continue to behave the way that he does and open himself up to the kind of criticism that I expect I'm going to hear from you and that we all just, make when we see what he's doing and not practicing social distancing or encouraging others to practice social distancing? And let's make a point. We don't want to, damn the entire event here. There are people that look to be separated, as we're getting a clearer view from our camera position here as they pan this crowd. But to Dr. John's point, Shauna, people are packed in towards the front. Why wouldn't the president say, I learned, I had this experience, I've done very well with it, apparently, although we don't even know because we don't have a test result officially from him to say that he is COVID-free. But why wouldn't he take this and run with it in a different direction?
Well, I think, and I don't know what's in the president's head, but I think it's because he has a hard time going back and changing what he said before. he, from the beginning of this, has expressed a reluctance around masks. He did start wearing one sometimes when he was in public, but he wants to seem like things are getting better, number one. He wants to try to distract people from COVID-19, even though he has had it or currently has it. As you said, we are unclear about whether he's gotten a negative test or not. But it's about projecting, strength. It's about projecting the fact that he may have beat the virus, whatever that means. And so I think his behavior right now seems pretty typical for him. I also, putting aside the fact that he is having a campaign event at the White House, which I guess we are going to be okay with since they had the Republican National Convention in part at the White House. But he also he has to figure out a way to get back on the campaign trail, and this is apparently the way he is going to do that. But this isn't going to change anyone's mind. I mean, maybe one or two people here or there, the fact that he's back out there, the fact that he is attempting to project strength. But the polls and the numbers are pretty solid right now. And it doesn't seem like there are that many undecideds when you look at the polls. So I think what this is about, other than making sure he reminds his voters who are not going to change their minds either to go out and vote, the campaign has talked about that there are people who are not being polled, that there is this hidden, silent majority for him. This is him signaling to them, please, please, please go out and vote, because if you look at the polls, Joe Biden is on track to win. So he has to, I think he has to do whatever he has to do to try to have a chance in November. So this is what we're seeing.
So I'm curious, and by the way, a lot of us are not okay with the president using the White House as a backdrop for a political campaign. That's for sure. Those of us who've watched politics over the years, it's like, you don't do this in a political campaign. He does it. What about, though, this cavalier approach to COVID-19, Shauna? What is the president's end game when it comes to COVID? Actually, you know what? Let me ask you this, Ann Gearan. What president's end game with this, as we're watching everybody live saying goodbye, which means he talked for about 17, 18 minutes there to this crowd that's gathered. What's the end game, Ann, when it comes to COVID-19?
Well, Alex, the end game is to continue the White House argument that the president was making before he himself got sick, which is, it's all cool. The pandemic will go away. We have beaten it. We have already beaten it. And people should resume their ordinary lives. And his own illness is obviously an interruption to that message. But what you see the president doing today is attempting to go right back on that same path of, yeah, this is a bummer, but we've got it. Therapeutics will cure you the way they cured me. By the way, he received a medical set of therapies not available to any other human on the planet. So he's not a great test case for the rest of the country. But leave that aside for a moment. This is the longest we've seen him speak in person. He was on a lengthy television interview last night, but obviously that was on television. So this is the first time people have actually seen him, relatively up close. And that is what the White House wanted, is to put him out in a sort of Evita moment on the balcony, speaking to a supportive crowd, and then to hustle him right back out on the regular campaign trail starting on Monday. Business as usual.
Okay, can I ask you, when's the last time this president spoke only 17, 18 minutes in public like this?
I can't remember another time. I mean, he occasionally gives really short speeches, but they're kind of perfunctory pro forma things. They're usually indoors. This is his moment. This is the kind of crowd that he really likes. And I by the fact that this was a quite brief address.
Yeah, certainly compared to what we usually do. And we should make them note that he was on Rush Limbaugh's radio show for 2 hours. But of course, radio, he could be sitting in any particular environment, wearing whatever he wanted to. Right. So, Jason, let me ask you, what goes through your mind as you look at this event and listen to what the president said, that which we gave our viewers in the first 5 minutes or so? And let me just say, looking at this, I'm somewhat encouraged that I saw more masks being worn than I anticipated, but certainly not blanketing the entire crowd.
Well, look, honestly, Alex, I'm not encouraged by seeing any masks one way or another because you're still indoors. And by the way, you're listening to somebody who, for all practical purposes, probably still has COVID. So it doesn't really matter. It's sort of like, hey, I'm going to wear a life preserver, but I'm still going to jump off in the middle of the ocean. You're still putting yourself in danger. Remember, just earlier this week, you have Mitch McConnell saying even he doesn't want to go to the White House because he doesn't think that they're doing proper procedures to take care of COVID. This is what I'm seeing. I'm watching a president who has doubled down on the fact that he cannot win a Democratic election, so all he can do is lie. He runs around with these ridiculous stories about how black people are leaving the Democratic Party. That's not true. The math doesn't show that's true. The polling doesn't show that's true. The polling doesn't show that with Latino voters. He's lying about his particular status as far as COVID, and I think most importantly, he's lying about his own fitness to go back on the campaign trail. You mentioned it, Alex, other people have. I've never seen Donald Trump do a rally for less than 90 minutes. Okay, if he was a 12-round boxer, this was a round and a half and he just left. The man is still sick, and if he wasn't sick, he would prove it to us. He would come out like he was in the middle of a church revival and do cartwheels before he got on stage. So what I'm seeing here is sort of the last desperate attempts of someone who recognizes that his campaign is failing, and his only means of success are to raise a white nationalist army that will intimidate people at the polls and use lawyers and the Supreme Court to steal the election, because electorally, this rally was a failure.
Yeah. Abby Livingston, picking up the point that, yes, you're the Washington bureau chief, but again, for the Texas Tribune, how does this kind of behavior play out within the state of Texas there? The fact is, it is a very purple state now. Yes, the president won it. Yes, in 2016. Yes, the most recent polls show that he is still ahead there, but that margin is tightening up. And it is quite remarkable. So give me a sense of how you think this kind of behavior plays out in Texas, particularly to Jason's point, when things can be fact-checked and you can tell that the president's not telling the truth.
Well, my first reaction to this was thinking back about Texas. And what you have going on in the state is an ahistorical scale of fundraising and organization on the part of Democratic candidates running for state legislature and U.S. Congress. And some of those Democratic candidates are hitting their opponents on this issue. Why aren't you wearing a mask? That kind of thing. And so when the president goes on television, he's reiterating that. And you can't tell me those Democratic candidates are coming out with those charges and they haven't poll tested them or put them in focus groups. They wouldn't be doing it unless they thought it was working.
So tell me what's happening then there in Texas with all of the organization, the money being raised by Democrats. What are the odds? And I'm not going to hold you to it. I'm not going to ask you to completely predict. But what are the odds of things still moving in the Biden direction? I mean, is it a realistic expectation or merely hopeful for those who would like to see Joe Biden win the state of Texas?
So Joe Biden has consistently polled very closely with the president. It's usually within the margin of error. But what's going on here is that I just want to step back and say, I don't know. And the fact that I say I don't know is imperative, that we don't just assume it's going to go Republican. And the reason I don't know is there is so much enthusiasm and so much organizing all over the state that I'm very skeptical of as to whether polling is actually, the pollsters know who's going to come out to vote. And I usually don't like to question pollsters because they're very good at their work, and I don't like when people tear it down. But I just don't know if we have any idea who's coming out to vote in the state of Texas this year because we have not seen this kind of organizing in past cycles.
Listen, I would have left to keep all of you around here a lot longer. We anticipated the president speaking longer than he did, but nonetheless, you're free to go, my friends, sooner than you may have anticipated. Thank you so much for joining me here. Dr. John Torres, Dr. Natalie Azar, Jason Johnson, Shauna Thomas, Ann Guerin, and Abby Livingston. I didn't even look at my notes. I know all you guys' faces. I got that. Thank